Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. For today's video, I'm going to be trying a palette from a brand that I had never heard of before, and their name is Mica Beauty Cosmetics. Mica Beauty Cosmetics is a mineral brand with a focus on natural products that are suitable for sensitive skin and hypoallergenic, and they actually reached out to me a few weeks ago to see if I'd be interested in trying some of their products. Now, I don't really tend to gravitate towards these types of mineral brands because a lot of their products are powders, like powder foundations and loose blushes and that kind of thing, and they're just not really something that I tend to use. But they actually gave me the opportunity to choose what I wanted to try from their website, which is really helpful because you know that you're going to be trying something that you want rather than maybe getting something that you wouldn't use. And you guys know me, the main thing that I review on my channel is eyeshadow palettes because I am obsessed with eyeshadow. So they sent me their on point eyeshadow palette, which is what we're going to be trying today. They did also send me their eyeshadow primer, however I didn't try this today. I wanted to try this with my P. Louise base to see how the eyeshadow performs with my usual products, and then I think I'll do a separate video on the primer to see what I think about that. Just a quick disclaimer, when they sent me the palette, they did ask if I could make some content with the palette. However, they didn't specify, anything in particular that they wanted, any time frames. So they haven't asked me to make this video. They don't even know that I'm making it, and there's also no money being exchanged. They just sent me the palette for free, and I am reviewing it today to give you my honest opinions on it. So I'm just going to do this review in my usual format. All of the timestamps will be below. So let's jump straight in. So this is the On Point palette from Mica Beauty Cosmetics, and as Mica Beauty Cosmetics is a brand that I hadn't really heard of before, I did take a look at their website to just find out a little bit more about them. They are sold online as well as in physical locations across 15 countries, and they have a really big focus on being all natural. They use 100% pure mica, and they are also free of lots of different things such as oils and talc and chemical dyes. However, they also mention that they are preservative free, and that I don't really know what to think about that. How are you making it last? Like, is it gonna go moldy? I know that clean beauty is very popular at the moment. People do like to avoid certain ingredients. I had started going down that road a little bit, but I've made the decision now that, if I want to try a product, I want to try it. I'm not going to worry as much about the ingredients as before. So in terms of Mica Beauty's philosophy, this whole all natural thing, it's not really for me. It's not something that I look for particularly, but if it is the kind of thing that you are into, then potentially that could be interesting for you. One of the other things that I really do need to mention as well is that these products do not come cheap. This is not an affordable brand, and this palette is no exception because this palette retails for $64.95. That is a lot of money to fork out for an eyeshadow palette, and the only one that I have that is more expensive than that is my VIDEOMICPRO palette, and that is professional grade makeup. So if you're going to be charging that much money, you better have the goods to show for it as well. When we look at how much product we're getting with this palette, it's actually pretty generous. We're getting 2.2 grams per shadow, which is some of the biggest eyeshadows that I have in my collection. I've got a few that are bigger, but they are definitely up there. And when we look at the actual cost per gram, we're at £2.46. Now that is more expensive than any of the drugstore options that I have in my collection, but it's also cheaper than any of my high-end options. So while yes, it is a lot of money, you're also getting a lot of product. Now when it comes to eyeshadow, different people have different opinions about the cost per gram. I know that that is how a lot of people used to justify the really big Natasha Denona palettes. I think they were like $200 or something. They were really expensive, but people who really liked her used to say, well, you're getting really, really big pans, and then other people would be like, well, does that really matter with eyeshadow? Because you're going to take ages to use it up. I just wanted to let you guys know that because £65 is a lot of money to fork out for an eyeshadow palette. However, this does work out more affordable than some other palettes that may seem cheaper at first glance. The palette comes in a cardboard box, and we have the ingredients on the back of this. So if you do need to keep an eye on that for whatever reason, do keep hold of the box. We only have two formulas, one for the shimmers and one for the mattes. And then we have the weight, which we've already discussed, as well as the shelf life after opening, which is 24 months. And when we open up the palette, this is what it looks like inside. So we do have a mirror. I haven't taken off the protective thingy yet, but you know what? I think I will. It's gonna look a lot nicer if I do. We have 12 eyeshadows, and you may have noticed that we only have 4 mattes to 8 shimmers. Now, I know a lot of people won't be happy about that, and normally it's not something that I like as well. However, I don't mind it as much in a palette like this one. All of our colors come from the shimmers, and then our mattes are really neutral. So you can use the mattes all the time and then work in the different shimmers. It's different when you have like a really colorful palette, but your mattes are really colorful and then like opposite ends of the color wheel or something, so it won't blend in together. But in this case, we have a dark brown, a lighter one, and a beige. And then we have a warmer reddish brown down here, which does mean that it makes it a bit less bothersome to have fewer mattes than shimmers. One thing that I do want to quickly mention, you will see me throughout the tutorial refer to the shades as pressed pigments, and that is an assumption that I made just based on the brand and, you know, how much they mention Mica and all of that. I did assume that these were pressed pigments. However, looking on the website, there is nothing to say that these are pressed pigments. It's called eyeshadow everywhere. There's no warning on the back or anything to say that these are not eye safe, but you guys will see as we get into the tutorial why I made that assumption. But yeah, as far as I can see, this is an eyeshadow palette and it is listed as safe to use on the eyes. So now that we're done with the details, let's move on into the swatches. We should be able to do all of this in one go for once, which I really like. So the first shade I'm going to use is the shade Basic. Just a nice beige, matches me pretty well, so that is a shade that's always going to be useful for me. Then we have Extra. That is a good swatch. That is a really good swatch. Then we have Low Key, which is our second matte. It's not a great swatch, but then I never feel like matte browns swatch that well. Even when they're pressed pigments, sometimes they're not that great. So I will let that one off. Next up, we have the shade Salty. Then Finesse. Finesse and Extra look quite similar. I mean, they're not that different. Finesse just has a little bit more pink, and then Extra is a little bit more bronzy. And then we have Savage. That is very, very pretty. Then we have Lit. Then we have the shade Not Sorry. Then we have Turnt, which is not a bad metallic purple. Not the most pigmented metallic in the palette, but these types of shimmery metallic purples can be quite difficult, and sometimes they come out as the worst shades in some palettes, which is always disappointing. So not as intense, but not bad. Also, these shade names are quite funny because I feel like they're trying to speak to a younger crowd. I do find that quite amusing. We have our last 3 shades. So we have the shade Done. The mattes aren't anything special there, are they? Respect. And then we have Keep It 100. There you go. I mean, as you can see, the metallics are incredible. These ones, Christmas, right? Like the perfect Christmas look in 3 shades. There's really nothing bad to say about these swatches. The thing to remember with swatches is they're not always going to be representative of how an eyeshadow will work on the eyes, because you might be using it with a brush, different bases, that sort of thing. But these do swatch really. So yeah, there we go. So now that that's done, let's get into how I got this eye look. All right guys, my eyes are primed as always with my P. Louise base so that we can just jump straight into the palette. And I think the first shade I'm going to go in with is going to be the Keep It 100 down here, which is our darkest shade. Oh wow, that is really powdery and that is picking up really, really well. I'm going to do things a little bit differently today. I'm going to take it on a flat brush and I'm going to pop that into the crease. Oh wow, that is pigmented. Mind you, between the price and kind of the description of the brand, I would be disappointed if this was not performing like this. I'm gonna come in underneath as well, just on the outer corner. Gonna bring it upwards as I would a liner, following the shape of my lower lash line. And then I'm gonna pack it on. And then I'm gonna bring it out slightly because I want to bring it out. I just mostly want to make sure my colour is even at this point. I'm not going to worry about pulling it out too far or anything. And then just because it has kind of packed on really tightly, I'm going to take a clean Morphe M506. This isn't something that I normally do, but it's looking a bit patchy. I just want to make sure that that is not the case. When you're going in with something that is this pigmented and this dusty, it's hard not to get it patchy. I'm also just trying to define my shape a little bit more. underneath as well a little bit. Just trying to even things out. Make sure it's nice and smooth. And then it does feel a little bit patchy at the front. So I haven't picked up any more product, but I'm just using my flat brush again. Just trying to make sure it's nice and even. And then back in with the M506. Okay, so that was a little bit of work, which I think on the one hand you do have to be a bit prepared for when using pressed pigments palettes. It's not necessarily going to be quite as easy as eyeshadows, but also then for the price I do expect it to have a certain level of pigmentation and I don't want it to be too hard to use. Maybe it's still a little bit patchy, but it is a nice strong colour. So that's a plus so far. Let's see how it actually behaves when we add in a second colour. So I'm going to take my Morphe M514 and I don't want to use the warm tone down here, so I think I'm going to go straight into low key, which picks up really, really well again. Let's see what happens when we try to blend. I'm not seeing an awful lot happening so far. I'm dipping in a lot more than I was in the first shade, but I'm using a very different style of brush as well. I think it is struggling to blend out a little, especially in the areas where the first shade was packed on heaviest. So that is definitely something to be careful with. Yeah, it's struggling to blend a bit. I'm gonna have a line because it was just packed on too heavily. It's a very nice shade of brown. I actually quite like that. It's just a bit of a shame that it's not really blending. Just gonna try and bring it outwards a bit as well. See if we can wing it, but just gonna take the same shade but on a Morphe M456. To see if I can kind of wing it out a bit more. Let's see, actually, if I just go back, does that let me blend anymore? No. That is a shame. I'm gonna add a little bit more underneath as well just to try and wing it out. But yeah, for the price of the palette, I would definitely want it to be a little bit easier to use. And so far, this isn't user friendly. Okay, so I just blended out the left eye and it definitely went a lot smoother than this one. It didn't take me as long. I don't feel like I've got patchiness in the same way. So I must have packed on more product on this eye. So we're gonna put it down to human error, but you do have to be really careful with pressed pigments palettes because they can just be really, really intense. So next up, I'm gonna go in with the shade Basic on a Morphe M330. And this is just a really nice light beige. So I'm just gonna use it to finish up the edges and pop some underneath as well. And then I'm going to come back in with the M456. I'm going to try and fix all this up. It's just going to annoy me otherwise. Just going to take my M506 again. I've not added any extra product. No, I think this eye is just kinda messed up. How annoying. Okay, yeah, I've definitely got hindsight on my side here. I should have gone in a bit lighter handed and then layered it up. Because I am looking at this side and I do feel like this side isn't as dark, whereas this side has a bit more intensity. So I'm gonna go and intensify this side before we move on to the lid. Okay, there we go. I did do a bit of extra blending on this side to see if we could kind of fix it up. And I think we're there, but it does still look smoother on this side. But let's move on. Let's move on to the lid shade. Let's see what we can do. I am really, really, really drawn to the green over here, which is called Not Sorry. So I'm going to start off with a brush and I'm going to use a Morphe M166. Ooh, that looks really pretty. And we're going to try no lush glue, no nothing. Ooh, okay, that's pretty. That is picking up very easily. I said no lush glue, I don't know why I meant glitter glue, and that is laying down really well. Just going over the whole lid with it. That is really nice. I am just gonna try my finger on the other side anyway. Oh wow, like your finger digs in so easily into this. It does feel kind of thick, but not in a creamy way. Like when you go in with your finger, it has a bit of a chunkiness to it. Has it made that much difference between the two? No, not really. So you can do either or. So it's very flexible formula. I don't think that's a thing people actually say, but I feel like that's the word that comes to mind. Very flexible. And that is really, really pretty. Really shimmery, really glittery, but not like a really thick glitter. That is really, really nice. I'm actually going to take my Morphe M506 and a bit more of Keep It 100 just on the outer portion. I'm just going to blend it in. The amount of fallout I have on my face is, it's turning into a lot. Just going to take the Morphe M456, just blend through the crease. I mean, this is how I want a shimmer to perform. That colour is absolutely incredible. I think I want to try layering them on a little bit. I think for the front of the eye, I might try taking a little bit of lit, and I'm using a Morphe M124. This isn't going to be as glittery, I don't think, but again, it picks up pretty well. Ooh, oh wow. Look at how they're mixing, look at the green they're making. Oh wow, okay. I'm getting really excited. Oh my god, that is super pretty. I just so far haven't felt the need to add glitter glue or spray the brush or anything. I'm just gonna go back in with a little bit of the green, patting over slightly. I am covered in fallout, I will say that. So you might want to be a bit careful when using this. If you were going to use this before going out, get dressed afterwards. So yeah, I'm just going back in with a little bit more of lit. This is super pretty. Super, super pretty. I want to try, I don't know if this is a bit risky, but we're going to go for it. I'm just going to take just another flat brush. I want to blend it in a bit more on the outer corner, so I'm going to try a bit of Savage. Gonna dot it. The layering is incredible. Oh, that is so much more pigmented than I expected it to be. And then back in with my brush from the green. I'm gonna go back over it a little bit. I want to tone it down a bit. I just wanted a colour that was gonna blend into the two. And then I think back in with a little bit of Keep It 100. I'm gonna kind of blend it over the two. I just wanted a colour that was gonna be a bit of a transition for the outer corner. I think there's a bit of a learning curve with this palette. I would not recommend this palette for beginners. I think a lot is gonna be down to technique with this one. I mean, I obviously messed up a little bit with the shades in my crease, although I feel like right now that looks okay. So pretty, guys. It's really, really pretty. Like, I did not expect this at all. I didn't think they would be this intense. And again, no glitter glue, no fresh base. I haven't done a cut crease. I just went in and it's come out like this. I'm just gonna go and clean up all of this fallout. I'm gonna prime my lower lash line and we're gonna carry on. All right, so I tried to remove the fallout, but I have so much left. I'm gonna have to do it again before doing my foundation. But we're gonna move on to the lower lash line, and I'm gonna go back into the shade Keep It 100. I'm just gonna take the same flat brush again, and this time I'm literally, that's it. I'm not going to take any more product than that. I am going to take it about halfway, I think. So the outer half of my eye is going to be matte, and I'm going to make sure it's nicely connected up into my outer corner. I'm going to bring it back in here, I think. And then actually I think I'm going to take a clean 456 and I'm going to blend. I don't think I want to bring in the lighter shade on the lower lash line. I want to keep it quite dark. Okay, so that seems to be blending out fine down here, so I think I was a bit more cautious. It kind of reminds me of what happened with the Subculture palette when it came out. I'm just adding a little bit more. But do you guys remember when that came out and it wasn't working for people in the way they expected it to? But that was kind of one of the first pressed pigments palettes that we had readily available, and I feel like people are more used to it now, but at the time it was a struggle. Any pressed pigment palette, if you're not careful, it's easy for it to go a bit wrong. I'm just kind of stretching the dark colour into it and just trying to intensify the wing shape. I really like the way that looks. For my lower lash line, I'm going to take my Morphe M138, and I have got to go into this shade, which is called Respect, and I think it's a duochrome, because when you look at it straight ahead it looks like a blue, but I'm looking at it from the side and it looks purple, so I'm excited. And let's try and pack it on. Okay, Pretty. I'm gonna go halfway again with this one. I'm gonna bring it just under the tear duct. I am getting it into my eye where these are really dusty again. This is where you just have to be so careful with pressed pigments. Yeah, it's gotten into my eye. This is a super pretty petrol colour, and then I'm just going to take a small flat brush. This is a really old one, and I think in the middle I'm just going to try the shade Turnt, which is the purple. This one doesn't look like it's picking up that well, but it is a purple, and purples are normally a bit more difficult. I'm just trying to place that in the middle where the blue meets the brown. Okay, it's having a bit of a struggle, like just a little bit. It's not bad, but so far this is the hardest one I've had to use in the palette, but I am getting there. Something is coming up, and it is still really pretty. I think all the shades in this are really pretty. I wasn't sure what to expect at all for that price and from a brand that I had never heard of, but these shimmers are gorgeous. Right, I'm gonna take my Nancy tapered crease brush. We're gonna do the inner corner as well. Gonna take the shade Salty. Oh, that is picking up really well. Let's see if this works. Okay, probably not my shade of choice for an inner corner highlight, but it works. Won't work for me as a brow highlight. Oh, but look at that though. No glitter glue. They look incredible. They look really pretty. I'm just gonna take a little bit of the blue again. I'm gonna add a bit more. I think I am just gonna add just a tiny bit more of Keep It Up, just right in the outer corner. I think I'm kind of regretting going in with the red, but I'm also not. I don't know, it's kind of hard to say. But I do feel like the green shimmer has maybe spread out a bit further than I wanted it to. If I'd used a glitter glue, I'd have had more control over it, but it also doesn't need a glitter glue. And then I'm gonna go back in with the flat brush as well. I'm gonna re-intensify the brown on the outer half. I'm just going to take my Ofra Verified Liquid Liner, and I think we're going to go for a wing. The liner is definitely struggling over the shimmers. I'm going to wing it out on the inner corner. And then I'm just going to take some of my Inglot gel liner just on an angled brush. I'm going to do the lower waterline. I was going to say lash line, but waterline. And then I'm also going to use it to go over the Ofra liner, but I'm going to do that off camera because that's really boring. Alright, so I've just gone over the liner with the gel liner, and then I did just pop on some mascara as well so that we could see something that looks kind of finished. I really like this look, guys. I think the shimmers are absolutely incredible. They needed no work, and for a palette at that price, that's what I want. I don't want to have to worry. I don't want to have to be thinking, like, do I use my fingers, do I use a brush? They have to do the work for me, and while I struggled a bit more with the mattes, the shimmers they did something. They look incredible. I love this look. So as always, I'm just gonna go and finish the rest of the makeup off camera. I have so much fallout to try and get off right now, and then once I'm done, we'll have a chat about my final first impressions on the palette. Alright guys, here is the finished look, and I have to say, I am a little bit obsessed with how it came out. Like, I think this is really pretty. Going into a more expensive palette, I'm always a bit apprehensive because it is so much money and you want it to perform really well when it's expensive, because otherwise it's just not worth it. This came out not only how I wanted, but better. So let's have a chat about my final first impressions on this palette. As I said, very apprehensive going into a palette that was this expensive. The shimmers to me are 100% the stars of the show. They are absolutely gorgeous. They didn't need any help at all. They just performed so well. I know I'm just saying the same thing over and over again, but they didn't need any glitter glue. They didn't need any base. They were fine wherever I used a brush or a finger. I didn't need any spraying. I didn't need any thinking, and that's what I liked. The quality is just really pretty. They're super sparkly. They're really vibrant. The one that I had the most difficulty with was the purple, but I got there in the end. Other than that, they layered on so well. When I put this red over the top of the green, I really wasn't expecting much, and it was just so much more more pigmented than I thought it would be. So yeah, the shimmers, 100% the star of the show, and there's 8 of them in the palette, so you want them to be good. The mattes, I did have a little bit of difficulty with at the beginning, and you know, when it goes right on one eye and not on the other, you know there's a part of it that's human error. So I definitely think that I piled on way too much at the beginning, and then I was struggling to blend it out and blend it out with the other, so that was me. But I think that comes from the type of palette that this is, because of its intensity and its fallout. So as I said, I wouldn't recommend this palette for a beginner. It's definitely a little bit easier because your mattes are more neutrals, but I would stay away from something like this if you are a bit newer. This is for someone who's had a bit more practice. Do I think that this palette is worth £65? I do, and that is because of how much product you get in it. Now, am I going to turn around to you and say, you know, you have to go and buy this, you need it in your life? No, I don't think anyone needs a palette that is £65. I mean, if I hadn't been sent this palette in PR, would I have bought it for £65? The answer to that is no, because I do not have £65 to spend on a palette at the moment. I think I'd almost recommend this more if this was just a shimmer palette. Like if this was 12 shimmers, I think I'd be a lot more excited about it, just because the mattes are a bit more neutral. So, you know, I'm not as interested in them, but I think if this was just a palette of shimmers in the same way as the Urban Decay Moondust is, I think I'd be all over it, because the shimmers are just, they're really, really, really good. I am super, super impressed by them. I do want to do something really quickly. I've got my Urban Decay Moondust palette here. I do want to compare some of the shades because they do look a bit similar. So first up, I'm going to do the greens. So I've got Not Sorry here, and then we've got Light Year from the Urban Decay palette here. They're not exactly the same. I thought they'd be a bit more similar in colour, but this one's a bit more blue. But can you see how much more opaque the Mica Beauty one is? The Urban Decay one almost feels like a topper compared to it. I don't think I've ever used them on their own, in fact. I think I've always used them on top of something else. I'm also going to compare Respect and Galaxy. So very, very similar in shades. In fact, I'd also say this looks like one of the shades from the Mercury Retrograde. And again, it just has that much more intensity, that much more opacity than the Urban Decay one. These ones aren't going to be as similar, but I want to see what they look like anyway. So I have the shade Turnt and then Magnetic. Oh yeah, actually they're completely different, but you can see that opacity difference as well. I'm going to do Extra from the Mica Beauty palette, and then Element from the Urban Decay one. I mean, both palettes are gorgeous. You can see the shades in all of these. They're all absolutely stunning. There's just something a little bit thicker, a little bit more buttery, and a tiny bit more opaque about the Mica Beauty shades. But the reason I wanted to compare them is that the Urban Decay palette works out to be my most expensive one in terms of cost per gram, whereas yes, this one is almost double the price, but you're getting so much product. So if you're looking for a nice shimmer palette, these are things to consider. I mean, they're both absolutely stunning. So yeah, again, I am really pleased with this palette. I'm in love with the look that I've created with it today. Do I think you need to run out and buy it? No. As always, if you don't have the money, don't do that to yourself. But if you can afford it and you want some really pretty, colourful shimmers in your collection, I have to say they are really nice, and I'm really impressed. So yeah, just once again, thank you to Mica Beauty for sending these to me. These shimmers are gorgeous. I'm definitely going to need to play with them some more in the future. If you enjoyed this video, then do as always, please make sure you give it a big thumbs up. Leave me a comment letting me know what you thought of it. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and that notification bell so you don't miss out on my next video. And I'll see you all in the next one. Bye guys!